Sparks that I don't remember. Hold and let it shine. Fix and start to fade away. Fix and start to fade away. Fix and start to fade away.
Hello, dear friends of Kabala International. We are once again with my dear friend Mario Sabán.
Hello, Nacho. Thank you very much, my friend.
Today we are going to work on Daat, the consciousness. But first I want to raise the subject in general, saying that in the tree of life we have the Superior Triad, which is Jojma, Baina, Kether. About the function of each of these three dimensions, we know that Jojma represents wisdom, Bina is understanding, and that between these two there is this Sephiroth relationship, Sephiroth, which we could call a copulation, and that as a result of this copulation, Daat is born. What is that, Mario?
Consciousness in Hebrew is Da, it is not Dat. When we speak of Dat, we are speaking of consciousness and knowledge. It is used practically equivalently, because Da, which is consciousness, comes from the same verb Dat, from the same root. Therefore, when we turn to the text of the Torah, we find the tree of the knowledge of good and evil from which the first parents ate. Tree, translated into Hebrew, is Etz Adat. Therefore, when they eat from the tree, they have consciousness of good and evil. Of course, here a lot of questions arise, because someone may say, they ate because they did not know that it was wrong to eat because they were not yet conscious of good and evil. Therefore, they could eat peacefully. From the point of view of Kabbalah, of Hebrew mysticism, the tree was designed to be eaten. Otherwise, it would not have been built. That tree was going to be eaten, and thus consciousness was going to be accessed. The problem was that it was accessed before, because of the intervention of the Nahash, the serpent, which did what it did, it overtook. Therefore, we entered consciousness. You raised a subject that is the copulation of Binah and Jojma, between wisdom and understanding, for the creation of consciousness, for the creation of knowledge. We are going to try to go deeper into that. Hopefully it will not be so technical for those who are listening to us, because we are already beginning to enter into a little deeper Kabbalah. I understand that people will be able to understand. We have a higher dimension, which is Kether, you mentioned it, the crown. And the question is, what happens in Kether? Because if we don't understand what happens in Kether, we will hardly know what consciousness is. Kether is a whole. That whole could be symbolized by the universe. And into the universe came two forces, basically the expansive forces and the restrictive forces. The male force makes the universe expand. The female force makes the universe stable. So in the universe there are two forces. There is a stability, which in Kabbalah we call the feminine force, and there is an expansion which we call the masculine force. So far I think you can more or less understand what kind of two forces go into this whole of Kether. When these two forces are revealed, the masculine force of expansion of the universe is called Jojma, and the force of stability of the universe is called Bina. It means that we, within the universe, see these two different forces. But these two forces come from infinity. They entered initially as a unit, which here were divided. These two male-female variables were divided. Light and darkness were divided, despite having the same origin. What is happening now at the lower level? That we and all the consciousness and all the fragments that are within the universe, we have to rejoin this masculine and this feminine. This masculine and this feminine. This is what we call copulation, what the Zohar calls copulation. To understand that it is an oscillation of the same process, that expansion and restriction belong to the same process. In practical terms, we would say that the consciousness embraces a lot of information when it expands, and the consciousness slows down and does not embrace more information when it has to integrate that information within itself. That would be the feminine force of stability. It means that when I am reading a book, I am expanding my kli, my vessel, just as the universe expands. But when I stop reading the book, what is happening is that those ideas are being integrated, because I am making a restriction. I am accommodating those ideas within a limited structure, which is my mind and of course my whole identity structure. So we act as the universe, and when we from below unite, we are creating consciousness, because consciousness is that each fragment connects with that memory of unity. What we call consciousness in Kabbalah is always Aleph consciousness, unity consciousness. It means that if I have consciousness, I connect with the matrix where I come from. That is to say, I am not an entity that appeared here from nothing. I come as information from the infinite, through my parents in the DNA, through the energy, through my neshama. But somehow we are cosmogonic. We are a cosmogonic result, and we are cosmogonic entities. This idea of being psychological entities divided from the other fragments causes us to be exiled from unity. That is why they leave the Garden of Eden, because they are exiled from a primordial unity. What is the difference? The difference is that when you return to unity and reconnect to unity, what you are doing is raising the level of consciousness. I raise the level of consciousness despite having differences with the other, joining or trying to join with the other. Of course, if the other one lets me and it's not Amalek. If the other somehow leaves me, my interest is to try to unite. And the other, if he has a level of consciousness, he should also try to join me. That would be the work that we do. It is a work that we could call a sacred work, because it is a work that increases the level of collective consciousness, the level of consciousness of the universe. That is why in Hebrew we call it Tikun Olam, the rectification of the universe. The consciousness of unity does not reintegrate me into Kether, but brings me to Kether by the merit of my effort. In reality, we could say that in Kether they were already inside the Garden of Eden, united to the divine light, but without consciousness of subjectivity, without consciousness of identity, they would be as if crushed by the light. Instead, we have a great advantage. By exiling ourselves from the Garden of Eden, we are returning to the Garden of Eden by our forces, and therefore we are meriting the return to that Garden of Eden. Therefore, the union of two fragments, which in this reality have to have a left consciousness of unity, what you are doing is something even much more elevated and sublime concerning the primordial unity that you are coming from. Therefore, it is very easy to be united to the placenta of the mother, because there you are unconsciously united. You have not decided to unite to the universe through the placenta, through the structures of your mother in the womb. But when you are now uniting with the mother of the universe, and you are uniting with the infinite Father, and consequently the infinite Father copulates with the mother of the universe, because in the end, the feminine of the infinite is the finite universe. When that is taking place within you, you realize that you are reintegrating into unity with subjective consciousness. That is, you do not abandon subjective consciousness. As India says, all is Maya, all is illusion. Subjective consciousness is not an illusion. When the subjective consciousness connects with unity, at that moment the process of increasing the level of consciousness begins. All this work of uniting fragments begins in a union of fragments in my inner self, in my inner dimensions. I cannot unite with you if I am not first united with God, because what I am going to unite will be impossible. If I want to unite with you and I have many fragments in conflict within me, There are many possibilities that my inner conflict will come out in this relationship. Imagine I am making the effort to unite with you in a friendship, in a job, in whatever, but if I have an inner conflict, of course I am going to displace it and I am going to find myself in conflict with you. But it is not a conflict with you, it is a problem of an inner conflict of mine that I have not yet resolved and that makes me displace it outwards. For that reason, Yisroel Salanter, one of the great Kabbalists of Lithuania, will say, in the first part of my life I was angry with everybody, in the second part of my life I was angry with everybody, and I was angry with me, and now I realize that I am only angry with me. If I have a conflict with someone, or if I have a problem that I don't have to push away, or if I have a problem that I am projecting, the conflictive one is me. Therefore, I either move away from the conflictive person so that they don't project the conflict onto me, or I resolve my conflict so that I don't project it onto the relationship. But somehow, I always get angry at myself. Why? First, if the other person projects his conflict in the relationship, I get angry with myself for not knowing how to set limits and for not leaving that relationship, because I have to accept that the other person has to solve his conflict. And secondly, if I stay in a relationship where I have not yet resolved my internal conflict, I also get angry with myself, because what I have to do is resolve an internal conflict. In conclusion, whatever anger you have is always with yourself. That is the conclusion. Now, the question is, why do I get angry? Because I realize that I have no union consciousness. Because if I had union consciousness, anger would not exist. There is no way for anger to exist when I have union consciousness. When my parts, my fragments, which are the dimensions inside my soul, I am not uniting them if what I do is not what I feel, or if what I think is not what I feel. In some spiritual movements, they call it alignment, that you are not aligned. Well, in Kabbalah we say your dimensions are not united, because precisely what unites them is the consciousness. So, if I do something I don't preach, or I feel something I don't say, or I think something I don't do, there are very strange dissociations that I cannot maintain over time. Dissociation can be maintained for a while, but in the end, there is a price to pay. Because the price to pay is a latent conflict. Therefore, the consciousness in a moment has to make a decision. I am aware that I have to unite these parts at this moment. And if there are divided parts, I have to see why they are all divided.
You have dealt with a lot of things. I am going to tell you some of the ones I have been thinking about. There was one question I had prepared, which is whether there is no Daat, and you answered it before. Amalek. This Amalek nonsense causes that disconnection with the Aleph consciousness. On the other hand, you also mentioned the unconsciousness of the fetus in the womb. I relate this unconsciousness to the fact that there is no active desire on the part of the fetus because all its needs are satisfied. So, what is the process that we go through in this continuous work that we have to do to reach Aleph's consciousness by our means? It is the education of desire through, and I am going to tell you very specifically, the correct interpretation of the mitzvot.
When we talk about mitzvah, the problem is that they do not divide which are the ceremonial ones and which are the ethical ones. I think the mitzvah is very important. The first one is ethical. Then the ceremony has to do with a matter of Jewish identity. So, I would divide them because eating pork or not eating pork is a ceremonial issue. It is not a mitzvah, even if there is an energetic justification that can be done, and that can be reaffirmed from the Kabbalah point of view. The ethics somehow has to be universal, and the increase at the level of consciousness has to occur beyond the ceremonial precepts. There we enter into a whole problem when you put the subject of the mitzvah that would be for another chapter, because there we have to start analyzing which are ceremonial and which are non-ceremonial. I do not want to get involved there. So, if you raise the subject of the mitzvah, we go into the subject of the mitzvah. I have no problem with that.
Next time.
Next time we go in.
Thank you very much, Mario.